My name is Michael Konnert. I'm the president and CEO of Vizsla Silver. I'd like to introduce Jesus Velador, the vice president of exploration of Vizsla Silver. And I'm looking forward to going through the technical aspects of the company today. Vizsla has consolidated a very high-grade, large-scale district in Sinaloa, Mexico, where we're actively exploring and developing resources.
Michael, thank you for the introduction. Good to be talking to you again. Jesus, nice to meet you for the first time. You joined the company. You joined the company after I met you. After I interviewed Michael back in October. I think you joined in kind of March of this year, soon after the initial resource was put out on the Panuco project. Jesus, what was your route into the company? How did you join? What was the process?
Well, it was to me, joining Vizsla, it was very exciting because the project, the Panuco project, since Vizsla announced the discovery and Vizsla started working there, it seemed to me like a very appealing project. It has been a project that seemed to be overlooked in the past by so many companies, but with the great success that Vizsla shown since the early stages of exploration in the project, it came to the attention of everybody working in Mexico. And it came to my attention, the great success and the great potential of the property. So essentially, for me, joining Vizsla was very, very exciting. And at the moment after the release of the mineral resource, and with all the potential that still remains in the property, it looks to me like a great endeavor and excitement.
Is the geology something that you're familiar with? Is it classic kind of epithermal vein-hosted Mexican style, or is it different? What did you know about the project beforehand?
Yeah, well, in the beforehand, I used to work in several prospects and projects in Sinaloa, close around Panuco, not per se in Panuco, but around the area. And also I get some time to work on San Dimas, in Tayoltita, First Majestic mine, located north of Panuco, about 80 kilometers. And the similarities are many between the two projects and with respect to other projects in Sinaloa, southern from Panuco, and even into Nayarit, where I have worked in the past 3-4 years, maybe. And the lithology is similar. The counter rocks and the mineralization is that's right. It's epithermal. It's epithermal 100%, and very, very similar to other epithermal deposits in the region, particularly to the north in San Dimas, epithermal quartz veins.
Well, great, Jesus. Thank you for that, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into the project. And I realized, Michael, sorry, I just kind of launched straight in asking Jesus about his background and things, but I didn't say congratulations on the resource. I mean, since I spoke to you last, there's been a huge amount of progress within the company, including that resource. And perhaps could you summarize where that resource now was kind of 4 or 5 months ago, what that resource encompassed and where it took you, what your next steps were for the company?
Yeah, and I can just quickly share a slide here that'll give a point of reference, and just to demonstrate where we're looking at here in terms of the resources. So the resource we put out in March of this year was predominantly focused on Napoleon, Tajitos, a little bit of Copala, and a couple of other smaller areas like San Antonio and Rosarito. But by and large, the resource focused on the western portion of the district. We made our discovery at Napoleon about 18 months prior to the resource cutoff date. And in that time, we put out a very large amount of silver and gold resources in both Napoleon and Tajitos. Now, since then, and I'll suggest that viewers go to our website and see the presentation and the press release that describes the resource in detail. But we were able to put together something that exceeded all of our expectations and exceeded the expectation of the market as well. Now, since then, Napoleon Tajitos have grown. Napoleon is growing steadily towards the southern end of the vein corridor there. I expect Napoleon to have a meaningful update in terms of resources. But what's become the major focus for us and what's become very, very exciting is the Copala flatline structure. And we currently have 3 drill rigs turning on Copala itself. One of the early discovery holes of Copala was actually over 80 meters thick, true thickness of over 180 grams silver equivalent. Really spectacular grades over large distance. Since then, we put out holes like 20 meters at a kilo silver equivalent, and many other high grade, very broad width intercepts at Copala. And Copala is just, again, talk about the mineral resource estimate exceeding our expectations. Copala has exceeded our wildest expectations there. And why we like it so much is that it's a flatline structure. It's a relatively flat line in orientation, which lends itself to likely in the future a higher throughput of mining, as well as it's very accessible, very easy to drill from surface. It starts about 40 meters from surface, and the deepest that we've drilled it so far is about 200 meters, I believe, below surface. So it's an incredible vein structure, and currently the dimensions are about I believe about 800 meters by 400 meters by conservatively, I believe the average is around 10 meters true thickness there. So we're thrilled with the progress at Copala. Of course, all these other veins that we're drilling, San Antonio, Napoleon, Rosarito, these are all showing promise to grow as well. But I guess if I had to summarize the progress and what we've been up to since the resource, is that we've been growing the district, growing the resources at these veins very, very rapidly, and I would say faster than any other company in our peer group.
Thank you. I hadn't quite appreciated. I'd seen Copala in the presentation materials and the marketing materials, but in your news releases. But I hadn't actually appreciated the different orientation of it. And the extent of it. Before we get into Copala, when I look at these epithermal veins and Napoleon, you've got 5 million tons, or you had 5 million tons in the measured and indicated categories and 4 million tons in the inferred category, and roughly around the same kind of grades, about 380 grams per ton silver equivalent. Those are kind of principally underground targets, aren't they? I mean, these would be developed as an underground operation. You might do a little bit of surface mining, but essentially these are underground operations. Is that the way that you view the majority of the subvertical structures on your area?
That's correct. Yes.
And what about Copala? Is it potentially an open pittable target?
Well, it has the potential. It has the potential, because it has the low angle characteristics, particularly to the north. Although to the south, with the more recent drilling that we are getting now results for the south, so to an extent, we see the structure. It's kind of stepping up a little bit, so to 50 degrees deep into the east. So it has potential. But so far, what we are planning is underground operation. The other thing important to consider or to have in mind is that we are seeing multiple splays, some at the hanging wall and some of the footwall of Copala. That could also be a driver to for that. But
as a bulk tonnage target.
Right. The thing with the open pittable consideration there for Copala, it could be a little bit challenging because it's close to the Copala town, and so
okay.
That.
Okay. Is it the same generation of mineralization? If it's got this very different orientation and a very different aspect, is it the same generation as the rest of them, or do you feel this is a kind of a different system?
It's very, very good question. So let me give you a little bit of the background first. We have conducted a couple of structural consultancies done by a structural expert in Mexico with lots of experience in Mexico. And what we have concluded is that we have multiple events of a long history of a structural deformation that goes back to the Cretaceous, at least to the Cretaceous. And so we see multiple orientations because the region has gone through multiple deformations from the Cretaceous, from the late Laramide orogeny to the Miocene. So multiple contraction and extension deformations. So that's the reason for the multiple orientations. And with respect to the fluids, what we see is that we have at least 2 different fluids that operated in the district. We haven't conducted a paragenetic study. We just collected spotty samples from Napoleon in particular for minerography, but we haven't done a proper fluid inclusion or minerographic study to conclude whether how many paragenetic events are present in the veins. But based on visual logging, visual inspection of the core, we infer we have at least two fluids. One that operated in Napoleon, carrying more base metals compared to Copala and tejidos in particular, and also less manganese. We see another characteristic. Some of the veins have higher manganese concentration in the form of manganese carbonate and manganese silicate, rhodonite and rhodochrosite, and that's quite distinctive in some of the veins. So, but other than that, we are not certain. We know we could have at least 2 different fluids. Another thing that we are doing right now, we continue learning about the structure and the mineralization of the deposit. It's a very exciting deposit with lots of mineralization and high grade. So we want to, get as much as we can out of that in terms of knowledge. And so we are also right now studying a program of argon geochronology of the 2 veins where we are collecting agial area. Obviously, those epithermal veins contain agial area that is datable through argon means. So we are collecting that information. That we hope to get some information in some months. It takes some months, but that'll give us also some information on whether we have multiple pulses operating through time or not.
I mean, one would expect that there's some underlying crustal architecture which is a part of the plumbing system, and that there is mineralization over time. And one would expect there are multiple phases.
Exactly. This is a region, as I said, that went through a long history of deformation. So we would expect multiple pulses, and this is what usually happens when you have very rich systems. Is most of the times it's an indication that many fluids, went through the structures over a long period of time. The more fluids, the more hydrothermal events that acted in the system, it's more favorable to make the district richer.
And at Copala, it sounds as if it's very structurally controlled with displays coming off the main fault or vein. And do you see the mineralization strongly controlled by structure, or is it kind of broad fluid flow?
No, it's a structure. The structural control is very strong in all the veins.
Okay. And when you talk about the average thickness, that first drill hole you mentioned, Michael, was kind of, I think you said it was 80 meters or over 80 meters. Is that a structural repetition, or is it a blowout or a dilational jog? What's the reason behind the thickening in certain areas?
It's what we see in Copala. It's very interesting. We are still, working on understanding better the structure of Copala, because we see multiple veining in very wide zones, like that one you're referring to, with the 80 meters in hole 190, I believe, 90. Sorry, and what we see is multiple veining zones, stopward zones, and crackle breccia being cemented by quartz. And we see what we're interpreting so far is that we have pockets very, very thick pockets of the structure, developing these very white zones. And sometimes the vein, it pinches as well, of course, but there should be some conditions, some structural condition that we are still working on understanding, that created these very white pockets in very local areas of the structure.
And what are your kind of vectors that you're using to target the richer zones or the wider zones? Are you using structural interpretation? Are you using the drill bit as a kind of a prospecting tool? Or are you using geophysics?
Well, in terms of vectors, we usually, make use of all the tools we have. So we take, of course, the intercepts as a guide. We also do some analysis, visual analysis to particularly the geochemical zonation, some metal ratios as well as an indicator, like particularly silver over gold ratios. Usually those come very, very useful. And the geophysics, we use it for target generation, for additional targets. But locally in the resource areas, or on the veins where we are delineating high-grade shoots, we use the drilling, the structural interpretation, and a combination of a structure with geochemistry and geochemical and visual analysis of the geochemical data and metal ratios.
And what do you consider to be a good indicator? Is it when the gold is high, so your ratio is low, or when the silver is high, so the ratio is high? Usually
the higher silver to gold ratio, it points towards the high grade shoots. So you'll expect to see an increase in silver to gold ratio towards the high grade.
So it's a specific enrichment in silver relative to the gold in the area.
Right. Yeah, the silver to gold ratio is crazy. It's high. It's very high in the high grade zones.
Interesting. Wow. I was expecting it to be the other way around, that the kind of the gold would be the driver of the indication of something proximal or something, just the kind of the right chemistry. But it's interesting that it's the other way around.
Yeah, well, in some districts and some kind of deposits, that's the case for some, but not for Copala. And a good example of that is that in one of the releases that we put out early this year for Napoleon, where we extended the strike of the vein to 2.5 kilometers. I don't remember the exact date of that press release when what was put out, but we announced that we increase of understanding of the shoot, and what we see is that the shoot is actually plunging towards the south. And we came up with that idea. Well, actually, the team on site, I wasn't involved in that part of the work. I wasn't there in the company by the time, but the team of geos interpret that the shoot is tilted to the south, and they come up with this conclusion with shallow drilling closer to the surface in the south, where they started seeing high gold concentrations but low silver compared to other areas of the deposit, and associated with carbonate veining, also increasing in carbonates, particularly calcite, and also the gold to silver, the silver to gold ratio was low. So what the interpretation at the time was that we should have a higher silver to gold ratio at depth. And so we put deeper holes in the zone, in the Ojo de Agua zone, is what it's called now. And it was successful. The hypothesis was tested and confirmed with great success.
And it's that part of you've talked in your materials about the Gallinero area, which is 0.6 of 600,000 tons at, what was it, 4.2 grams gold, something like that, and 278 grams silver. Is that the upper end of the? I see you got a box around it in one of your slides, and is that the upper end of that plunging chute?
Yes, that'll be like the upper end, and then you see the deeper zone.
And you mentioned that you've got multiple rigs on. Sorry, Michael, do you want to?
Why don't I share the slide here that shows the interpretation of our model? So Gallinero would be just right around here.
Right.
Okay, and therefore you're drilling. But that's not this section is not showing the plunging shoots. This is showing your interpretation of a metal zonation.
Well, it is. It is. So what is showing there is that we have a gold-rich shallow zone to the south. That's the area I was referring to, where we put a few shallow holes, and then we got carbonate material and higher or lower silver to gold ratio. And then we interpreted that we should have a higher silver to gold ratio at depth that we tested, and we succeeded.
Okay. Okay. So that's the defensive holes that you drilled. If below the word gold rich and that line there, that section of holes, I see you've got some very good silver equivalent true width. So that's right. 2,000 gram per ton meters. So that's 2,000 gram meters. Is that right? The pink.
Yes.
The fuchsia color.
Yes, that's right. Greater than 2,000
gram meters. Good. And what's the lateral variability that you see on something like Napoleon? You know, is it very nuggety? Is it how much confidence have you got on your drilling? Are you going to have to? I mean, how close do you have to drill it? I see in the Gallinero zone, there's a lot in there. How robust is it laterally along strike?
Yeah, well, there's a nuggety effect, like pretty much any high-grade epithermal deposit. But what we see is that the structure is very consistent throughout the 2.5 kilometers. So we see the structure continues, and what we see is like and it's shown actually by the dots, which are the piercing points to the veins. What we see is like there are shoots within the structure. So we have a continuous structure throughout the 2.5 kilometers with multiple shoots with, high grade and wide zones and some like what we call anti-shoot or narrow or low grade zones intermediate in between the high grade shoots. But that's the case for the Napoleon.
Good. And you've got how many rigs have you got on site at the moment? In the latest presentation, I think it says 9. Is that still the case?
At this point, we have 9.
And 3 are on Copala.
That's correct.
And those are the diamond rigs?
Yes, everything diamond.
It's all diamond. And so where are the other 6 rigs? What are they up to?
We have 3 other rigs in Napoleon, 2 in Ojo de Agua in the southern area.
Okay.
That we discover, below surface. And we have a directional drill rig in Gallinero South. It's actually being moved. We're transferred right now to Ojo de Agua as well. But as of last week, it was drilling underneath the Gallinero South. And we have the 3 in Copala. We have another one more in the Copala Cinco Señores area, but doing exploration, not drilling Copala per se, but another target that we have at the footwall of Copala. And that's 7. And we have another one deployed in the Cordón del Oro zone. It's a prospect vein called San Antonio, where we have already multiple good intercepts, high-grade intercepts, and we are sort of delineating the high-grade zone or the shoot in the zone. And the other one, we have it to the west of Napoleon in a new prospect vein that we call La Luisa. We are very excited about Luisa because we are following the same model interpretation of Napoleon that we could have potential plunging shoot, and that is also we also interpret that the whole region, the whole volcanic sequence has been tilted to the south, towards the southwest. So what that makes us believe is that the La Luisa, being located farther west from Napoleon, could be more preserved from erosion with respect to Napoleon. You see, in Napoleon, if you go to the north, you see the vein, the wide vein exposed right on the surface. And as you go to the south, because of tilting of the chute and probably tilting of the volcanic sequence, you have the preservation of the full vertical extent of the chute. So farther to the west, we have this other vein called La Luisa that we surmise it should be fully preserved from erosion, or pretty much fully preserved.
And is it a parallel repeat of, not a repeat, but it's a parallel structure to Napoleon?
That's correct.
Okay. So was that picked up through geophysics? Is this where the geophysics helped as a regional exploration tool?
The one that was picked up from geophysics is Josephine. This is a few meters away west from Josephine. This one was put out through mapping and a surface expression. So there's a small adit into the vein on surface, where it is actually very narrow on surface and low grade, but we interpret the grades and widths should improve at depth, and that's what we are testing right now.
And how deep are you having to drill to get a different?
So far we are drilling 250 meters below surface.
So that's the hole length. So the target you'll intersect below, if your hole is 250 meters long, you're going to intersect the target zone kind of at a shallower depth. Is that right?
Yeah. No. Well, we're drilling 200 meters below surface on vertical.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. You've talked about doing a resource update by the end of the year. Remind me, when was the cutoff date, the drilling cutoff date, or the data cutoff date for the resource that came out in March?
November 30th.
Okay, and so how much drilling will you have done of new drilling to include in the new? It's probably a big number.
It's a big number, yes. For the last resource that we put out in March, the cutoff day, as I said, was November the 30th, and that incorporated over 440 drill holes and to amount 124,000 kilometers of core. And right now, as of to date, for 2022, we have drilled 80,000 meters of diamond drilling. So our data, our cutoff for the database is going to be September 1st for this upcoming resource estimate. And so we estimate between what we drill between December and now, we estimate we'll incorporate it about 100,000 meters of diamond drilling into the new resource. But at least what we see is that the resource growth, what we think is not gonna show a linear correlation with the amounts of meters. So what we expect is that the growth is gonna be significant, not directly correlated to the amount of meters. So.
Oh, really? I was expecting it to be lower, because when you do a follow-up resource, quite often what you're doing is infill work. So the envelope doesn't expand very much of mineralized material.
Yeah. Well, what we estimate right now, but because sometimes it's kind of hard to monitor the south allocation or to allocate the meters, but we estimate we have done about 30% of our drilling into infill and 52% expansionary drilling, growing the resources in the known resource areas. Particularly, a lot of our efforts has been dedicated to Napoleon and Copala, as Michael has been pointing out. So we'll expect to see a significant increase in those two areas, because a little bit over 50% of our drilling has been dedicated to expansion, and about 17-18% to new targets.
Okay, I keep asking about the geophysics because you've talked in the materials. It shows about it shows that you're doing it, and that you're going to be doing a kind of an EM survey across the full property. But in the answers you've been giving me so far, it seems as if you're doing quite fine without the geophysics. You're doing it on mapping, you're doing it on drilling.
Yeah, well, the geophysics, we didn't cover the whole property with EM at the time. So we cover a portion of the western part of the district over Napoleon and Copala, but not the whole district. So we plan for this year to cover the whole property, the 6,800 hectares of the property. with EM, but getting a contractor, the right one with the right equipment has been very challenging, because there are two kinds of EM studies. One is in the frequency domain, and the other one is in the time domain. And the one that we applied is the time domain that seems to work in the area, because there's some infrastructure around the property, quite significant, good infrastructure that actually is very useful for us. But that infrastructure creates some noise when you apply the frequency domain kind of survey. So what we need is to have a contractor that is able to do the time domain EM study in the whole property. So pretty much an airborne EM study for the property, and that's been the challenge.
And can that pick up the zones which don't have kind of massive sulfides, which don't have the presence of the base metals? I mean, what happens if you get you've described to me quite a lot of these veins are slightly different in their characteristics, and some might be silica and carbonate, quartz carbonate, gold, silver with very low sulfide content. You don't know. On the bigger property, you might have some areas which don't perhaps respond to EM. Is that a worry?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's the survey can result. It can detect massive concentration or significant concentrations of sulfates, massive sulfates on the structure, but it has the capability to find resistant bodies as well, and thick quartz veins are very resistive to they're not conductors, they're very resistive to electricity. And so it has the potential to discover as well the massive quartz veins with low concentration of sulfates.
Has that been applied in this area before? I mean, have you seen that?
No, it hasn't been applied in the area.
So you must be rushing to get all your drilling done in the next 3 weeks before the data cutoff. And then I guess your job doesn't slow down at all. The drill rigs will keep turning, and then you've got to be doing a resource on top of it.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. The rigs don't stop ever. So, but right now, for for a budget, we have 120 kilometers of drilling planned for the year. So, but we are gonna close our database for resource estimate in September 1st. So we don't expect to conclude or to finish the 120,000 meters by September. So we will cut off with the amount of drilling that we have at the time of closure of the database, and we will continue drilling throughout December. And what we expect is to conclude the 120,000 meters by early December, mid-December.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the update. And Jesus, it's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Michael, perhaps just kind of bring it out of the project level. Can you just give me a bit of an indication of how what level of feedback you're getting, particularly given the fact that the markets have been haywire? Silver prices have been up and down. People's attitudes to precious metals have been up and down. So a bit of feedback from you and what you're hearing from your investors would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. A lot of companies might have taken this opportunity, this market as an opportunity to kind of slow down expenditures and to batten the hatches and change strategy a little bit. But the feedback that I've received from our shareholders and the strategy that our board and team continue with is that when you have a tier 1 discovery like this, when you have a very, very large district that's only recently been consolidated, that has this huge amount of discovery upside, and you already have 9 rigs on it, you have to keep drilling, you have to keep that momentum, and the reason for that is that I believe that as we come out of this negative market, back to a risk-on trade, let's say, or to a more favorable trade for precious metals, I certainly and truly believe that I certainly see and truly believe that Vizsla is going to be the leader in that silver gold space as we move out of it. And the reason for that is that we've done, all these things, outside of the project to prepare for that. So we've recently listed on the New York Stock Exchange. We're constantly marketing to new markets in the US and Europe and all around the world. So the amount of people, the amount of investors that are aware of Vizsla increases every day. And that just opens up the audience to see these excellent results that we're putting out. Now, of course, our vision with Vizsla is to become a very large scale producer of silver and gold. And we talked about the geology today. I think this has been an excellent interview so that everyone can understand the complexities and the opportunities and what's exciting about the technical side of the project. But we always like to highlight that we have a district here that's been in production for centuries, and as a side effect of that, you have a huge amount of production infrastructure that just exists in this ecosystem here. We have things like roads and 35 kilometers of underground workings that already exist. There's high tension power that runs through the hills of our project. We have a 500 ton per day mill that we purchased as part of the property acquisition consolidation. That's not likely to be the mill that we use to go into production, but it does show that there are, it's not like we're just in the middle of the jungle and we need to build our first mill in the area. This is a truly a mining district that we've consolidated. And so, as we succeed with exploration and the resources, and as we succeed with putting larger and larger resources out to the public, in the background, what we're doing is preparing to move into large scale production here. And so, having veins like Napoleon and Tajitos and some of the more exciting new discoveries like La Luisa and some of the other development pipeline projects like or veins like San Antonio, this is excellent. This is building up a large resource base. But the developments at Copala have really been a game changer for us. And so having this very large, open in all directions as well too. It's except for west, of course, because it basically daylight's there. So from open along strike to the north and the south, and then down dip to the east there, where we're seeing a huge amount of potential for Copala to grow. Now the orientation is such that we can we have quite a significant possibility of large throughput underground mining there. So bulk tonnage underground mining in a sense. And that will allow us to basically envision the project to look at how we can make this project even larger in scale in terms of production than we thought originally. So we're very excited about that. I know this was kind of a bit of a long-winded outro, I suppose you could say, but I just wanted to highlight that the Vizsla is unique in the sense that we have momentum. We haven't stopped drilling. We haven't lost momentum, through this difficult market. And the reason for that is that I think we have something very, very special here, something unique in the industry. And I'm very excited to see where this is heading in the coming months and years here for Vizsla.
Well, good. Thank you for that extended summary, should we say. I'm looking forward to seeing the new resource. I'd be very interested to see the results coming through from La Luisa. That sounds really interesting, the fact that you've got that potential replica of Napoleon. Yeah, great. Keep the rigs, drill, baby, drill. I mean, let's see what happens. Gents, thank you both very much. I look forward to catching up perhaps after the next resource comes out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye now.